Alright, today is our engine run-up, and what you're looking at is our engine run-up machine. And basically is not really a machine, but it's more of a way of holding an engine after we get a full restoration and or rebuild on an engine. And so it's a jig that rolls around, and it can sit flat on these supports, but it is a way of taking an engine and breaking it in. And any kind of break-in that we do, you have to run it up to temperature and do certain things, like breaking in the cam. And what you do is you run it at certain RPMs, about 3,000 RPMs, for about 10 or 15, 20 minutes. That breaks in the cam so the bearings seat properly. What you're seeing here is a laser, and this laser tells the temperature. It's right now 176, and that has a red dot on it. They're pretty common. A lot of people have these days. They're not high tech, but that laser, we point it all around to make sure that we're getting a good reading on temperature everywhere on this thing. What's not pretty about this whole engine is that we have an older style exhaust header on here, and they're a little rusty. We're running a Holley carburetor, a 350 CFM Holley carb with a stock intake, but the engine's been painted, and we're running stock distributor and alternator, things of that nature, and that right there is our radiator. It's hooked up to a battery pack, and right here is our boat gas can, and that's where we're pulling our fuel from. So the engine's running. We have good oil pressure, which I showed you earlier. It's at idling at about 40, 45. And what's neat about this is this right here is filled closer to, I'm sorry, it is 50. This right here is filled with water, so it does not vibrate. These are racing type of gauges that will not bounce around when it's going down a racetrack. We use them here because this sometimes will vibrate. And they're odometer gauges, but we have the three gauges, RPMs and water. The water one we did not hook up, we used the laser. But the RPMs we have running because we can tell what the RPMs are. So that way when we do the break-in on the cam, this engine sounds great. There's no knocking, which is always a concern. You can have knocking from, the bottom end, from timing gears, from anything. And you can see some water on the ground. That's just a little overflow from the coolant.
Slight exhaust leak on all the exhaust.
Yeah, and that's last but not least is something we knew was going to happen. The exhaust leak is occurring. We use the customer's headers, of which we are going to convert over to a newer style header. Most likely it's a two-piece ceramic coated header, and we'll do that. So that's our engine. It's up and running, all broken in. And the reason why we do this on this machine, lastly, is we don't want to put this whole newly repainted, newly rebuilt engine back in to the vehicle, get it all installed, start it, and then have a problem. That does occur, and it did actually occur on this before I shot this video. We had a problem with an oil leak, which caused us to have to pull off the cam gear and the whole front of the engine to get to that oil leak. That's been resolved, and it's running great.